Now, right here, you got a good place to put the Mattress Warehouse because right across the street is a Target. And you can get your pillows and bedding and everything and all these accessories at Target. And you might buy your bed and the pillows there, but all kinds of accessories are right here at Target. So putting that bedding store right next to the Target, because Target doesn't sell beds, makes sense. Plus, they have Pinstripes, Bistro, Bowling, and others, and I love Pinstripes. And this is North Pier, and they have to integrate Navy Pier and North Pier. It would be good for this whole area. There's all kinds of shopping and retail and different things on North Pier than there is Navy Pier. And you can pick up boat rides on North Pier as well. They have a dock, and you can pick up boat rides there as well. They can have different types of cruises. Maybe evening, you would say booze cruise, like my friend Al, who was chief of police of Skokie. He used to run a booze cruise here in Chicago. After work on Friday night, he would run a booze cruise onto the lake. It was just drinks and cocktails and that. And it was a Friday evening. And then he run one on Saturday, and he could have on Sunday. But early in the day, Sunday, not late at night. And it's out for cocktails and drinks to go on the lake. Cocktails, drinks, and networking. It's really cocktails, drinks. You go out there with friends. They have dancing. They have a DJ. You can dance. You can have cocktails. They have appetizers and everything. And you get to meet people. And anytime you're meeting people, formally, there's formal networking. But anytime you go out to a club, you're still networking. And you're meeting people. And so here is Navy Pier. North Pier, like I said, should be integrating with Navy Pier. And they need to market them together as a package. Navy Pier and North Pier should be marketed as a single package together. But they don't. But they should. And then you have the theater. Now, you have an IMAX in Navy Pier. But if you want a selection of movies, you have the AMC 21. If you want to see a single movie on a big screen, Navy Pier has an IMAX theater. Never been there, but I heard it's good. I don't know if it's awesome, but I heard it has an IMAX, and I like IMAX theaters. Seeing Star Wars in IMAX would be awesome. There are some movies that if you see it in IMAX, it's unbelievable, that huge screen and everything. So seeing Star Wars, any of the Star Wars in IMAX would be awesome. But also the Marvel films in IMAX would be awesome. So they don't compete. The AMC down here doesn't compete with the movie theater, the IMAX. They're not an IMAX. And you got a lot of selection. And again, the AMC, where it is, it has a bowling alley upstairs as well. And it has food and drinks, and it has pool tables. And so there's 2 bowling alleys, but there's a lot of people. So if you want to bowl, it's nice. There's good capacity. I like bowling. I grew up bowling. And if it wasn't for the gangs that took over Drake Bowl, and then it closed down, oh yeah, it closed down because of the gangs. People stopped going because of the gang activity. So, again, and it was stunk. I played Asteroids all the time. Centipedes was there, but I always played Asteroids. I loved Asteroids. You blow up the alien ships in Asteroids. You got the alien ships, and then you blow up the asteroids. And so I spent a lot of time breaking up and destroying asteroids, and then at a special time it go woo, and then the alien ship would come and you would shoot the alien ship. But that was every so often. The rest is just breaking up asteroids. But it was a great game. I loved playing it. And then I would go bowling there as a kid. And I do this all by myself. You can bowl by yourself. I played asteroids by myself. But when the gangs moved in, and then they brought knives, and they did, and I'm, the heck with that. I just go hang out at the park where I didn't have to worry about them. So I stopped going to Drake Bowl. And just like I went to IHOP, Harlem Irving Plaza, I used to go rollerblading, and I loved it, and it was awesome to meet young girls. But I loved rollerblading, but it was awesome. They play like these songs by Kool and the Gang and that. Yeah, a lot of black artists. And we used to dance to it while we rollerbladed. And it was cool. I got to meet these girls and that I didn't know. And then I met some guys I didn't know. And we were talking kids, meeting kids. But I go up there and take the bus all the way up by myself most of the time. But one time I went with my friend, and he got in trouble with one of the gangs, and I had to back him up. And then I didn't go again because they took over and they couldn't get him out. My assistant lived there. They finally closed down the mall and then renovated it, and they finally got rid of all the gangs. But it didn't solve the problem. They got them out of their mall, but they went somewhere else. So it was like the girl who was black who wrote the book on the projects. She said the reason that we had all this gang violence and we became the murder capital because they tore down the projects. They didn't take care of solving the gang problem, and they tore down and gave them housing vouchers, and they did. And they spread them all over the city, and now you have turf wars where they already had a defined turf and they weren't killing each other. They had their building and another group had their building, and it was defined. All the violence was in the back. It was just about making money, but when they tore them down, it reestablished new turfs, and the violence went through the roof. And so they didn't solve the problem. And so they scattered the problem all over the place. So neighborhoods that weren't violent became violent. So anyways, she was on WGN talking about her book. I don't know the name of her book, but she wrote it and she was right. So anyways, there's a new building going up, but here's the end of the river right here. And you could take this right out to Navy Pier. And water taxis can come from here. And I think it says River East. But it's beautiful. And you could have booze cruises or lunch cruises or whatever run right here from this pier. So it's a really cool place. So anyways, and this is a very nice neighborhood. And here's the other fountain. And it doesn't run, but no one talks about this fountain. They talk about Buckingham Fountain, but this is a big fountain, and the guy did this fountain was made for his wife. This fountain was made in honor of his wife. So this goes back to the beginning. I was here when this all was built out. So it says the Centennial Plaza and Foundation, Nicholas I. Mellis. Okay. But the whole point is this fountain here was built in dedication to his wife. So it was in something he built in memory of his wife. And I know that for a fact. So right here, right off of North Pier, is the Riverwalk. And this used to be, yeah, it's Lizzie McNally's. This was a piano bar. Now it's an Irish pub, and an Asian girl used to work here that I had a huge crush on. She used to work at Joey Bono's, and she worked over here, and I went over here, tried to see her, but she wasn't in. But anyways, and you go under here, and this takes you to the underground parking on North Water, and this takes you to the Gleacher Center for the University of Chicago, and there's parking here for the University of Chicago Gleacher Center. So, as it says, the South Park, it has all this, and you get discounted parking for the university. So, and then you just take the stairs up right there, and you go up to the Gleacher Center. So, a lot of people from the University of Chicago park here. Aces of Spray. Yep, power washing. So anyways, it goes under, and this is where people from NBC Towers parked too. The news station, NBC, they park here. And here, you can see the NBC right here. And my chiropractor from Chiro 1, she was a female. She was in NBC Towers. And so you got the receiving and everything, and you got the indoor parking for it. And then you got over here Columbus Drive, which this takes you back out onto. And so you have all this down here, all intertwined. And this is basically, this is Illinois that runs under, and this is where all the University of the Gleacher Center students park, right here in this open parking lot. And they redid it. It's nicer. But this is where I used to park to go to school at the University of Chicago. And parking was $10 because they validate. So, and then the University of Chicago, if you're down here, there's bowling right here. And then this Asian restaurant I first went to here at the movie theater long before Ann Fan took me. I went to this location back in, I think it's been here since 2006, this Japanese restaurant. And I got to know the bartender. He was a white guy, and then a female replaced him, and he moved on somewhere else. But anyways, they own multiple locations, and they have another one on Michigan Avenue where I used to go as well. And then I went there with Ann Fan once as well. I think they have 3 locations. And I got to know the people at the Michigan Avenue one as well. I used to go there and get, a giant Futamaki and a California roll. And I think Tekkemaki. And that's called, in Japan, she was from Japan, it was called the poor man's dinner. Oh yeah, they serve the California roll in Japan. So anyways, it was called the poor man's dinner. She's like, in Japan, that's the poor man's dinner. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, I'm poor. I didn't know it was the poor man's combination, but it makes sense. It was the cheap things on the menu. And the reason I had the Futamaki is the Futamaki's a bunch of vegetables. Futamaki's vegetables, and I think it might have egg as well, but it's a bunch of vegetables. I wanted to get the vegetables, the fish, the avocado, and so on. But they called it the poor man's dinner. It's either, I know it's the giant Futamaki, and it's either with a Tekkemaki or California roll or California and Tekkemaki. But either way, it's the poor man's dinner in Japan. So if you order that combination, you're giving away that you're not that wealthy. But again, it doesn't mean that. I like that stuff, but she was right. I wasn't wealthy, and I was trying to hook her up to Arlington Heights talking about taking the metro out because she was from Japan, and she was working there at the bar, and we became kind of friends, and I told her, well, the Japanese, and she said, I don't know where any Japanese are in Chicago. I work with these people, but I don't know where the Asian, and I'm like, well, if you go out Arlington Heights in that area, there's a big Asian mall. They have a bunch of Asian restaurants. I was there with Bethany the first time. I didn't even know it existed. And they have all these Asian restaurants. And through my brother, I realized his acquaintance, there's Matsui. And Matsui is Japanese. And my brother's good friends with their family. The husband and wife are both Japanese, and the kids. And he does bank stuff. And so I found out that Arlington Heights was a big area for Japanese. Lots and lots and lots of Japanese lived out there originally. There was a big Japanese population in the Arlington Heights, Buffalo Grove area there. A very big, prominent pocket of Japanese. When they were here during the 80s and working for industry, they moved out to the Arlington Heights and Palatine, Arlington Heights, and Buffalo Grove area. And that's where the big Japanese pockets, and there's still a bunch of Japanese people up there. Not that many, but there is. And so I told her, if you take the train out there and go to this mall where all these Asian, you'll meet some Japanese people. She was looking for friends. I didn't know any Japanese churches. I could have said I know a bunch of Korean churches, but I don't know. Is there a Japanese church? A Japanese. I know there's a Buddhist thing over here on State, and it's a cultural center, but I didn't know if there's any Japanese churches here. They could have. The church in Japan, that's the former Yakuza, they could do a church plant out in Arlington Heights, and they could open up a Japanese church in Arlington Heights. I'm not opposed to that. I have lots of Japanese friends, but they're scattered all over the place. And but they could open up a Japanese church, and I think there's enough Japanese people up and around there. I don't know how big the congregation would be, but I mean, nothing wrong with opening up a primarily Japanese church that focuses on the concerns of the Japanese or the American Japanese community in America. So, again, it's not like integration doesn't work, but also sometimes you want some concentration so they can specifically just focus on needs of Japanese Americans. So, yes, you focus on the interracial needs and everything, but again, every race has, sometimes they just want to focus on the needs of their own people at times as well. So there's all black churches and all black colleges and that, and they just focus on the needs of those black individuals. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't sue for discrimination. They're not. So if you go as a white person, you're welcome. You can go to an all-black church. I've been to all-black church. But again, they're not discriminating. It's just, it happens to be all black. So they don't, you could go as a white person and they won't discriminate against you. But the whole point is that they're doing this to address specific needs of the black people, of the Asian people, and then they're all white churches, and you get them that want to address needs of particularly white people. So there's nothing wrong with that, and we can't look at that as racism. So yes, we're addressing needs, but you have to be fair, but you're addressing certain needs within your community. So there's certain issues. And so we have to have this ability to dive deep within each of our cultures to solve the issues within inside of our cultures. And that takes a collective of people from that culture. And so sometimes it's ethnic, like you have Jewish temples. And so I've been to Jewish temples as a Christian, but mostly everybody that goes is Jewish. And I wasn't unwelcome to go to the Jewish temple. But basically everybody goes to the Jewish temple that are Jewish so they can do a deep dive on Jewish issues. So all of this exists right now. You go to the Buddhist temple and you find a bunch of Buddhists, right? And they want to address issues with people that are Buddhist. You go to the Hindu to address, or you go to the Muslim and they want to address issues in these communities. So there's nothing wrong with that. So all this exists. And it's how we interact with people outside of it that matters. And really, that's what the law is talking to. When you step outside, you have to have this coexistence. And if we can't get to a point where we can coexist, then it all collapses. So if a white person is scared to be around black people, the system fails. And if a black person is scared to be around white people, the system fails. And if a black person scared to be around Hispanic or vice versa, then the system fails. So we have to be able to coexist and feel secure around each other. And if we can't feel secure, then your community has a problem. And that's what the laws are set up for, so we can have this coexistence where I don't have to fear a black person, and a black person doesn't have to fear me. And if I feel fear being around the black person, then there has to be some adjustment by the black person, because I should have no fear. But they shouldn't have fear from me. So the system fails. And our education and our leaders are failing. So Jewish people should feel, I work for all Jewish firms. And we did talk about it as Christians. There are several Christians that work for an all Jewish firm. And we used to talk about it sometimes, that they can say anti-Semitic, but we can't say anti-Christian. And so this goes back to 2001. Not that things were that way in particular, but there needs to be a fairness between the two. If you're in a hire as a Jewish firm, as the former head, felt threatened by me because he felt as he was King Jew. And he felt very threatened. I'm not Jewish, and I have all this connection to all these very prominent